Anna Smith is a hedge fund manager who tries to exploit price discrepancies between convertible bonds and common stocks of companies. The strategy that Anna Smith uses is most likely known as. We've got equity market neutral, fixed income arbitrage, or convertible arbitrage. So under A and B, under equity market neutral, we're only going to be using common stocks of companies. We're not going to be using convertible bonds. So we're going to have a long and a short book, and those should equal out to essentially zero net exposure. And so that's what we're doing under equity market neutral. And under fixed income arbitrage, it's going to be a similar process to equity market neutral, where we're going to be going long and short different bonds and trying to capture some spread there based on price discrepancies. So that's going to leave us with C as our answer, convertible arbitrage. It's right there in the name. We're going to be going long the convertible bond and then shorting the common stock and hoping for some price convergence there. Answer C. Mezzanine-stage financing is most likely provided to new companies for the purpose of. So mezzanine-stage financing, this is going to be a very late stage of the investment cycle. So given that, what are we going to be likely using that money for? Is it going to be A, developing a prototype? It will not be for developing a prototype. This is going to be more in like the angel or seed stage when the company is more of an idea. The mezzanine stage is going to be once they're actually a legit company, have cash flows and marketing and all that good stuff. B, constructing market research. I think I would lean towards ruling this out depending on C, given that mezzanine stage is probably going to be further along than the market research phase. This is going to be closer to the angel or seed stage than it is for a later stage company. And C, covering expenses related to an IPO. That sounds like it's going to be the most correct answer, given that this is going to be a very late stage thing that a company's doing, which lines up with mezzanine. Answer C. A hedge fund manager has a beginning year value of $370 million and a 2 plus 20 fee structure. So what this means is 2% management fee, 20% incentive fee, with no hurdle rate or watermark. The structure of the hedge fund is set up so that the incentive fee is calculated net of management fee. If the ending value of the fund is $400 million, then the total fees paid to the hedge fund for the period is closest to. All right, let's pull in all the calculations for this. So management fee, we're going to calculate first, and that's important because the incentive fee is net of management fee. So we need to know what the management fee is first so that we can get rid of that from the incentive fee calculation portion. So management fee, straightforward, 2% fee times our ending AUM of 400 million gets us an $8 million management fee. And then incentive fee, we're going to take our profit, which is our ending AUM minus beginning AUM, and then we're going to take out that $8 million management fee. So that leaves us with 22 million in profits. And then we're multiplying this by our incentive of 20%. So we earn fees of 4.4 million. And then last step is just adding this 8 million and 4.4 million together, gives us 12.4 million, which is going to be answer A. In the context of macro hedge fund strategies and managed futures funds, which of the following statements is most accurate? We've got A, both macro strategies and managed futures funds are more likely to profit during periods of higher volatility. I think we can make the case that macro strategies should profit during periods of high volatility because it gives them good opportunities to go long and short and trade different assets. But for managed futures, they're generally going to be more trend followers. So they're going to be buying assets that are going up and trending hard up, and they're going to be shorting or selling assets that are going down or trending hard down. So under a lot of volatility, managed futures funds are going to get kind of whipped back and forth. So they're probably not going to do well with high volatility. So long-winded way to say we'll rule out A. B, managed futures funds are more likely to profit during periods of higher volatility. Again, we can kind of rule this out for what we said in A. While macro strategies are more likely to profit during periods of strong trending market conditions, I think we would lean towards macro doing well under higher volatility. Strong trending would be good for managed futures. So let's see what we got for C. Macro strategies are more likely to profit during periods of higher volatility. Sounds good based on what we mentioned before. And while managed futures are more likely to profit during periods of strong trending market conditions. That's going to be our answer here, what we're looking for. Answer C. Which of the following hedge fund strategies most likely incorporates a top-down analysis approach based on global macro factors? Is it A, macro hedge, B, equity hedge, or C, global analysis? Right off the bat, global analysis isn't really a type of hedge fund strategy under the CFA curriculum. This is more so just referring to taking a global approach to analyzing companies or other macroeconomic variables, I guess. B, for equity hedge, this is going to be focused more so on bottom up and stock picking, so to speak. So we're looking for a top-down approach. Equity hedge is going to be more bottom up. So that's going to leave us with A, macro hedge, which is going to take a top-down analysis. Anything with macro in it is generally going to be focused on the macro picture, so macroeconomics, which is going to be that top-down view. So they're looking at the macroeconomics and then they're trying to determine from there what they should be invested in. Answer A. The creation and redemption of in-kind shares by authorized participants is a feature that is unique to which of the following types of securities? Is it A, ETFs, B, hedge funds, or C, closed-end funds? So creation and redemption of in-kind shares. For closed-end funds, there's not going to be creation of shares. Closed-end funds IPO, and then they have a fixed number of shares that are going to be on the market. So we can rule out for that reason. And then B, hedge funds. These are not going to have a creation and redemption of shares by authorized participants. Hedge funds are only going to be open to a limited number of investors, and they're going to be set up as partnerships that investors can invest in as limited partners. And so this process is not going to apply to that. So that leaves us with A, ETFs, which does use this creation and redemption process, which is partially what makes them so efficient, is that the authorized participants sit between the end investor and the issuer to run this mechanism and make sure that the price of the underlying stays close to the price of the actual ETF. Answer A. XYZ hedge fund charges a management fee of 2% based on assets under management at year end and a 20% incentive fee. The initial investment is £125 million and the firm earns a 40% return in its first year. Assuming that the incentive fee is computed net of management fees and the management fees are calculated using end of period valuation, the fees earned by XYZ hedge fund is closest to. So let's pull in all our info that we're going to use to calculate this. So our management fee is calculated end of period, and it's a 2% fee. So we're going to take this 125 million, multiply it by our 40% return. That'll give us, this here gives us our ending AUM, and then we're multiplying that by the management fee. Gives us $3.5 million for management fee. Incentive fee then, because we're computing net of management fees, we need to figure out what our profits were. So we're going to do 125 million times 1.4, and then we're going to subtract that from 125. So then that's going to give us our profits from our investments. And then from there, we're going to subtract out our 3.5 million management fee. So now we have our profits net of the management fees. And then now we can finally apply our incentive fee of 20% to that. And when we do that, we get 9.3 million. And then last step is to just add those two figures together, gets us to 12.8 million pounds, which will be answer C. Which of the following statements is least likely correct regarding hedge funds? So least likely correct, two of these will be correct statements and one will not, which is what we're looking for our answer. They have high investment restrictions and have a goal of generating high returns either in an absolute sense or over a specified market benchmark. So the second part of this is generally right. They're going to have a goal of generating high returns, either absolute or over a specified benchmark. However, they don't normally have high restrictions in order to do this. They generally have low restrictions, and they're going to have a wide range of tools and options as far as implementing their strategy and generating those returns. So I would lean towards A being our answer so far. Let's make sure we can rule out the others. B are set up as private investment partnerships open to a limited number of investors. That is a true statement, so we can rule that out. And lastly, C, have an aggressively managed portfolio of investments across asset classes and regions that is leveraged and or used derivatives. This is also going to be a correct statement regarding hedge funds. So for that reason, we rule this out because we're looking for an incorrect statement. Answer A. Which of the following is least likely a compensation structure used in alternative investments. A, dividends, B, soft hurdle rate, or C, high watermark. So we're looking for least likely. So 2 of these are compensation structures and 1 is not. That one that is not is going to be our dividends. This is going to be determined by the investments and what capital is kind of returned to shareholders. They could be involved in alternative investments, but it's not a compensation structure. Soft hurdle rates are part of compensation structure in alts. It's basically saying that in order to earn your incentive fee, you need to at least earn some baseline level of rate of return, and then above that, you start earning your incentives. In the high watermark is where if you have a huge run-up in your investments, but then your investment drops a ton from there, you need to get back up to that high watermark or where your investment portfolio used to be in order to start earning investment fees again. So we're going to go with A here. Which of the following is most likely to be a key reason for investing in real estate? And we've got 3 reasons here, and we need to determine which of these 3. So 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 3, or 2 and 3 only. So statement 1, potential to provide an inflation hedge if rents can be adjusted quickly for inflation. That's going to be a correct statement and a reason for investing in real estate. And generally, real assets in general are going to be good inflation hedges. Rents can be bumped up, and also if inflation comes along, that tends to lead to property appreciation for real estate and other real assets. Statement 2, the prospect that multiple year leases with fixed rents for some property types may lessen cash flow impact from economic shocks. That's also going to be a correct statement. Because these companies are locking in early, they're not able to basically get out of their lease or sign a new lease. And so their rent becomes a very essential thing for them to have for their business. And so even though they may be going through a rough time, they're still going to want to try to make the rent so they can keep their business going through the rough economy. So there will obviously be some stretch, but it will lessen that cash flow impact. And then 3, potential for competitive long-term total returns driven by both income generation and capital appreciation. That is also going to be correct. So we're going to go with A. All 3 of these are good reasons to invest in real estate.